Hey friends, so creating safety in a relationship is one of the most important things you can do for that relationship to be healthy, happy, and long-lasting. And safety is not created by shutting people out, by keeping them at a distance, by constantly pushing back on any milestone because you fear it will threaten your independence, even though when you're with the right person, your independence won't be threatened. It'll be encouraged. Safety is created through having an open heart, by being vulnerable, by sharing your feelings, by having honest, open conversations, by letting people in instead of walling up and shutting them out every time they try to take a step closer to you. When your heart is closed, you can create fear, doubt, and misunderstanding in your relationship without even realizing that is what you're doing. Meanwhile, with an open heart, you create and grow intimacy and respect, and that in turn builds trust. Trust is the basis, the solid ground where you put 4 pillars: faithfulness, safety, commitment, and reliability. Not just in the beginning of the relationship, but for its whole life, because, hey, relationships are living things. They're a lot like plants. They require you to tend to them, and when you do, they will flourish. If you don't tend to them, if you don't take care of them, if you don't feed them, if you don't nurture them, they won't survive. Never mind be healthy and grow. Now, we can't really talk about how relationships flourish without also mentioning how they end. And while obviously every situation is different, it is highly likely that when you look at the big picture, it was the erosion or flat-out destruction of one or more of those pillars of trust we just talked about. And what contributed to that destruction of the pillar usually looks something like poor communication, or communication that didn't happen at all, or resentments piled up somewhere in a dark corner without ever being voiced or addressed, trust being broken by deception or some other shady business, needs that went unfulfilled, lack of tending to the relationship from one or both parties. Sometimes it's all of these things happening in no particular order, and sometimes it's the refusal of one or both parties to be open-hearted, to allow vulnerability to exist, to let feelings happen, and to communicate them. When only one person is doing this, you are dooming that relationship to fail inevitably because only one person cannot do all the proverbial lifting. Being closed-hearted, aka emotional unavailability, does way more damage to relationships than I think anyone talks about. And probably the saddest thing about that is that there are a lot of people out there who lose out on amazing opportunities with wonderful people because they just can't allow those walls to open. Not even pull out one brick. Instead of working on healing so they can be open, not just for the relationship's sake, but for their own good, they double down on the walls, making them higher. They add a moat and razor wire. And later on, when they find themselves alone, these same people will wonder why nothing ever works out for them, when really the answer is right there, looking them in the mirror. Thinking about the things that didn't work out actually has a purpose beyond just hindsight being 20/20. It's about learning from those failures and mistakes and challenging ourselves to be a better caretaker of our relationships in the future. And that starts by being better caretakers of ourselves and working through our issues and allowing our hearts to be open instead of locked up in a box all the time. And look, I know what you may be thinking. Having an open heart can be very uncomfortable, sure. Opening yourself up and taking risks always places us in the position where we might get hurt. But is the alternative really any better? Remember that when you keep your heart closed, when you keep those walls around it all the time, you may think you're keeping it safe, but sometimes what you're actually doing is keeping it hidden and out of reach from the love and connection with another person that you really want. Something to think about. That's all I've got for you this week. I'll be back next week with another priority message. Until then, take good care of yourselves. Bye!